Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, How to Build Customer Golden Records that Increase Customer Lifetime Value. My name is Brett Carpenter, and I'll be your MC for this webcast. I'm excited to introduce our speakers. First is Tim Blackwell, an analytics data architect at the Chaloub Group, and joining him is Scott Gidley, Vice President of Product Management at Zaloni. Now, we'll have time to answer your questions at the end of the presentation, so don't hesitate to ask them at any point using the Ask a Question box that's located just below your player window. But before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce Chaloub and Zaloni to you. The Chaloub Group is the leading partner for luxury across the Middle East since 1955. As an expert in retail, distribution, and marketing services based in Dubai, the group has become a major regional player in the beauty, fashion, and gift sectors. By blending its Middle East expertise and intimate knowledge of luxury, the Chaloub Group is building brands in the region by offering service excellence to all its partners and a unique experience to its customers. The group is moving fast from a traditional distributor and retailer for luxury in the Middle East to a hybrid retailer bringing luxury experiences to the fingertips of customers everywhere. And Zaloni helps enterprises drive competitive advantage by cataloging, enriching, and actioning data for rapid business value. By utilizing the Zaloni data platform to create a unified data supply chain, businesses can be more agile and move rapidly to the cloud by providing business users self-service access to trusted data and delivering fast time to value at scale. Now with that, I'll turn it over to Scott and Tim to talk about what's needed to effectively measure business value for your data projects. Scott?
Hey, thanks, Brett, and thanks to everyone for joining today's webinar, and especially thanks to Tim for co-presenting with me. During today's session, what we're going to do is explore the benefits that organizations are gaining from delivering a golden customer record as part of their overall customer experience and customer lifetime value initiatives. And, let's face it, this isn't really a new concept. This has been something that organizations have been trying to solve for a long time. But a lot of them are still trying to get there. I mean, this goes back to the early days of data warehousing and the customer golden record. And what I think organizations are starting to see that as their data platforms and the scale of data that they're working with changes, it's kind of thrown a wrench into a lot of the processes that they've had before. So we'll look at how companies like Chaloub have started to overcome these problems and these challenges with a little help from a company called Zaloni. And ultimately, at the end of today's session, our primary goal is to provide you with insight and some food for thought on how, a new or alternative approach to this old problem might be able to deliver a more accurate and scalable customer view that in turn hopefully drives a more increased customer lifetime value. So let's get started. If you look at this slide, you can see that organizations are continuing to invest heavily in tooling that drives their digital transformation and their customer growth. CRM applications, marketing automation, segmentation analysis, all of these systems, whether they're on-premise, whether they're in the cloud, or a combination of both, are in high demand. But often their return on investment and their ability to drive a single customer view is limited or has reduced business impact because they're still silos, right? They're not an interconnected set of applications where there's a single ID that spans all of these systems. And the organizations that have been able to solve this problem and do it in a way that scales and can work well with other systems are really starting to drive value. You can see, 84% of organizations working to improve customer experience report an increase in revenue. That alone should fund any of these initiatives as you move forward. Another one that's kind of interesting is that 80% of customers are more likely to purchase a product or go back and buy from a brand where they provide a personalized experience. So again, the drive towards the digital transformation is really pushing a lot of these initiatives. And then from my own data and analytics heart, the drive to use data and analytics projects that are relating to customer experience is going to be more than 40% of the entire data and analytic portfolio by 2020. That quote comes from Gartner. That's pretty impressive as well. So, those are just a few stats that show the importance of this. But I'd like to kick it over to Tim for a second and let him talk a little bit about the impact or the benefit Chaloub was hoping to gain as they built out their customer data hub.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I mean, we had a particular set of challenges, really, in dealing with our customer data, because we are quite a diverse group made up of a selection of franchises, some of our own concept brands, some of our joint ventures. We have a very diverse landscape when it comes to our customer data. So the challenge there was to really get this data under control and start deriving some value from it. Previously, we had a centralized CRM system, but due to the fragmented nature of our business, it couldn't really meet the needs of our brands in terms of marketing activation and helping them to know their customers. And for us, as a luxury retailer, the relationship with our customers is very important, especially those higher spending customers. Those are more frequently occurring customers, and most of our business is done face to face. We're very much a bricks and mortar operation, although we are diversifying to become a hybrid retailer. So knowing our customers is very key for us. And previously we had huge challenges in doing that, and just understanding the history of the relationship that we had with our customers in terms of what they're spending, where they're spending, what their preferences are, was very difficult to achieve.
So Tim, were there specific metrics you were trying to capture, or you want to try and capture on sort of the interactions with the customers and those types of things that would help you measure some of the effectiveness of this?
The first challenge was to just who are our customers, to know our customer, and then to measure the engagement with them. So particularly their lifetime with us and the customer lifetime value, and then delving a bit more into how frequently they are shopping and what their activity is across our brands. Now, to the end customer, they may not know that they go into one particular brand and then another. They don't know they're part of the same group, but that information is very valuable to us because we can see their shopping preferences and behavior across multiple brands, whether it be buying handbags or shirts or makeup or gifts. So this is really high value information for us. And to be able to measure that engagement, and then ultimately to derive some sort of customized experiences for them, and to really make sure when we're reaching out to these people and contacting them that we're getting that level of engagement right. We're not bombarding them with text messages and SMSs, and when we do contact them, it's something of value, and it's targeted to their segment. So we're segmenting them based on their spend and their recency and which brands they're shopping in.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I think as we look at some of the value you're trying to drive there, one of the things we want to look at are some of the challenges, and you mentioned some that you faced, that customers face when trying to unify this type of information. And we've boiled it down to a few areas here: complexity, visibility, and flexibility. But one of the things that there's an interesting quote from Gartner that talks about by 2022, 50% of large organizations will have failed to unify engagement channels, resulting in the continuation of a disjointed and siloed customer experience. And I think that's really, as Tim mentioned, what Chaloub is trying to address. And all of these issues, complexity, visibility, and flexibility, go back to the same issues we've seen for decades, right? Siloed data and a lack of standards and the lack of ability to understand the quality of information makes consolidating these data sets complex, right? Lack of quality can diminish the value. We've seen over and over again as organizations look to bring the data together, let's say into a customer 360 view or customer data hub. Is the data fit for purpose? Can we profile this information and identify, do we have dates of birth in the dates of birth fields? How well populated is our social security number or our identification field, whatever that might be? And how do we use those things and improve those things with an underlying data management platform to increase the effectiveness of our consolidation issues? And I think all of these things have been compounded by the sprawl of data and the overall growth in data volumes and the volume and variety of information that's been caused by applications being split to the cloud, people purchasing more and more third-party data, the mix of software as a service applications, and then increasingly now people trying to capture data in a more real-time fashion, whether that's IoT or just truly just pulling data from customer experience and pulling that information in real time to provide, the next best customer offer and those types of things. Just to give you some examples here from our end, we've worked with a customer in the hotel and travel and leisure industry, and they had a data matching application that they had built internally, and it had been working to build out their 360-degree view of customer for years, and it worked very well. They were very happy with the functionality. But the hotel had grown over acquisition year over year over year, and they started to get more and more information, and their existing application was now no longer able to run and meet the service level agreements that they had on a nightly basis. So let's say they had a few 100,000 records coming in from various hotel chains that they wanted to update their customer hub. They had a 3 or 4 hour window that they could run during certain times of the evening that they were trying to run this process, and ultimately they started to realize that it wasn't scaling. They needed to look at a new approach that could scale in a more transient or ephemeral way to build out their processing to support their needs from a nightly SLA perspective. So I think we're starting to see more and more of that as organizations look to modernize their approach. And Tim, you talked a little bit about your challenges prior, but maybe if there's anything else you want to highlight here, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, our challenge is particular in that we're not a monolithic brand. So the challenge is, like as you said, very much siloed data. Our partner brands have what we call a freedom of execution. Since they are the owners of that customer relationship, they own that customer data. So they implement their own e-commerce platforms, their own CRM systems. So that the challenge for us is to maintain a view of our customers at a group level, and we can provide the sort of, once we aggregate this data at a group level, we can provide those extra value services back to our brands. We can provide them insight that they can't get from their own individual CRMs. They can see obviously their interaction with their own customers, but they don't know what that customer is doing outside of their range of stores. So we can provide services back to those brands, both enhancing their existing CRM capabilities through more advanced analytics and getting that cross-brand penetration, seeing what else they're shopping and what their preferences are. And then obviously we have to join that with our legacy ERP systems, our historical CRM data. So we had really a very disparate set of data sources lying all over the place, and then obviously having to integrate some near real-time data to our integration bus and things like that. And obviously getting a handle on that data, governing it, and ensuring quality, data quality, as you mentioned. It's no use collecting all this stuff without really understanding and being sure that you're collecting the correct quality data and being able to cleanse it thoroughly before stitching it and creating that trusted customer 360.
Sounds good. So I think as Tim outlined, there's a lot of different challenges here, disparate systems, trying to bring different types of data together, and then being able to provide that back. I know one of the really interesting things you mentioned there is being able to provide that data to the other parts of your organization, through the other parts of your brand, so that they can have access to that information. And ultimately, to help our customers like Chaloub and others accelerate this delivery of trusted high-value data, Zaloni has built and delivered the Zaloni data platform, and this is our governed data management solution, which is really unified. And ultimately, the idea here is we're helping our customers connect to data sources, wherever those data sources may be, in the cloud, on-premise, software as a service applications, file systems, and streams. And as we discover this information, we're trying to create a very rich catalog that contains a metadata environment that isn't just a passive catalog for documentation, but it's really something that can help you take action on this information and on this data. So the idea here is that once the data has been discovered and it's been added to our catalog, we can help add business context to it. We can help validate its fit for use and its fit for purpose. So as Tim mentioned, struggling with understanding the quality of the data and the context of the data is a problem that organizations suffer, regardless of whether they're trying to build out a customer 360 view or a lifetime customer value. During any application, being able to search and find relevant data for analytics and operational use cases is an issue. So organizations can use our catalog. They can add information here to provide business context. They can profile the data so that they can measure data quality. They can apply data quality rules to the information so that they can improve it if they want to use it for some other purpose. And then ultimately they can consume that data from our catalog. They can pull that data into a cloud data warehouse. They can pull that information into an FTP site where they're making it available to other parts of their brand or other partner applications. And this is all done with a very connected line of governance across these different initiatives. So you may be able to set business users in your organization who can browse the catalog and consume information that they need for a BI report, whereas somebody like Brett may be a data engineer and he's building pipelines to populate data for your customer data hub, for instance. So there's really this collaborative role between business and IT that the platform provides. But key to this platform is an add-on that we've provided that's called the Data Master extension. So the Zaloni Data Master extension is essentially allows you from our catalog to apply intelligent data matching algorithms that use artificial intelligence and machine learning to identify duplicate and near duplicate information, apply survivorship rules. So if you're trying to create that best customer view, you can do that as well. And then ultimately persist this information once you've got this holistic view into a variety of data stores and targets. So it could be something, as I mentioned, where you're publishing this data out to, we have customers pushing things into things like Snowflake or Redshift in the cloud. Other organizations are publishing it into an on-premise data lake, and maybe it's being put into something like HBase that they're using to drive analytics from the back end. And I know Tim will go through some of their architecture, but our goal here is to provide this unified solution that gives you lots of flexibility to meet the scale, but also continue to solve the underlying data management challenges that you might have had before. So one of the things I wanted to mention here quickly is, we have a lot of customers that are trying to really decide, they're evaluating, one, whether they should pursue a new data matching or a new master data management or potentially a new customer data hub or 360 customer view project. And some of that has been spawned by the fact that organizations are pursuing, the data lake initiative where they're maybe pushing data to a cloud data lake and they're trying to determine, what's the best use of the information once they provide it there. And they want to take advantage of the scale that cloud provides. But my advice often to our customers is just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. So I think that you really need to evaluate the current state of capabilities of what maybe your current initiative has or some of the tooling that exists in your current environment versus taking on a new initiative like this just to drive this type of project, because there's a lot of things to consider, right? Traditional data matching and master data management solutions are generally focused on certain types of domains, name, address, email, contact information, product information. And sometimes if you're going to update the algorithms or update the way that these tools match, it either requires an update from the vendors or there's a lot of in-house updates to this information, professional service engagements that might be needed. So flexibility could be limited there, but they're very powerful applications. They've been around for a while and they've been through the rigor, so they provide pretty good results. Most of these types of solutions scale based on an existing vendor's technology or servers. So I go back to the example I had from the hotel chain. They had built up something internally, but it was a single server application, and they sort of hit the bounds of they couldn't buy a big enough server to make it perform in the way that they needed on a nightly basis. And then I think another thing to consider there, as I mentioned, the matching algorithms are often based on proprietary technology. So if there's some new advent of new matching capability that's available in an open source project like the Spark machine learning libraries, you may not be able to take advantage of that in an easy way with some of the traditional matching tools. But nonetheless, they've been around a while, they've been put through their paces, and they can deliver on the use cases that they've been promoting. So I think those are things you still need to consider based on what your overall needs are. We see customers pursuing the Zaloni data mastering where maybe they want to expand the different types of domains that they're matching on. You can build out the algorithms and build out the support via supervised learning techniques within our solution. So if you have data that's specific to your organization that would help from the matching, you can take advantage of that. And that's sort of the whole process of live training our matching algorithms based on your live data. From a scalability perspective, the Zaloni data mastering is based on a Spark backend, and so it can be scaled up and scaled down as needed, determined on the amount of data you have and the SLAs that you need to perform. So we can kind of scale in ways that some of the other solutions may not be able to. And then ultimately, we're building everything on top of the Spark machine learning libraries with some customizations that we've made. If there are new algorithms or new ways that you want to take advantage of matching, or maybe there's something that you've built out internally, there is a pluggable approach to our solution, which can provide some value for customers who have very specific needs. So I've gone over these to some degree. And how we're using supervised learning to make the system more intelligent. I think another thing I want to highlight is the advantage of using our Zaloni data mastering extension is that it is able to leverage the entire Zaloni data platform. So all of the metadata that we've discovered from your various systems can be used to identify a data source that you want to use as part of the matching process. You can leverage the data quality components, the data profiling, and the other things that can help you determine whether the data is fit for use. And you can use our data pipelines to be able to build the solution that's going to actually pull the data from the source systems, join it together, match it up, create this customer 360 view, and then provide you with that output table or stream, whatever the way you want to provide the information to your consumers. So being able to leverage this entire platform gives you a lot of capabilities and flexibility as you move forward. So a few things to highlight here is we have sort of an IT interface that can be used for setting up the algorithms and maybe doing some of the initial matching process that's going to essentially create the candidates for subject matter experts to review and say, yes, these look like matches or these aren't, and I want to split these records apart, those types of things. And that helps us tune the results based on your sample data. And as you build out the model, once you're happy with the accuracy of that model, you can save it, and then the IT individuals can take that model and apply it to the live data and execute it as part of a pipeline. So really, it's a collaborative environment where you can kind of work together. There's governance involved there, whereas a subject matter expert may be able to provide their expertise on determining what's a duplicate or not a duplicate. But the actual execution of this model on live data at scale is going to be something that would be managed from the IT side of the house. So just a few points there for some of the ways that we approach this problem and ways that we help our customers move forward as they look to modernize their approach to Customer 360. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he's going to give you some insight into how Chaloub did this for their Customer Data Hub project.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, I mean, as Scott mentioned, there are various approaches you can take to this problem, and it's, at its heart, it is mastering this customer data, and how do we do that? And we looked at the various options when we had this, from the traditional sort of big scale master data management platforms that you can buy, like Scott said. They're very well proven. They've got a solid track record in achieving this kind of thing. And at the opposite end, we looked at, can we just build our own? You could do this just from a series of rules in a SQL database. It's hard, but with 100 steps, you could achieve a reasonable match of data. But we went with this slightly novel approach because we saw an opportunity to bring in an entirely new data platform as well for further use cases down the line. I mean, initially, the main problem statement was this deduplication of the customer data, but there's not an opportunity to bring in a set of new technology for us and to do things in a slightly novel way. And from the diagram here, I'm sure this is a very common view for a lot of businesses. We have our CRM sources, we have our ERP for the transactional sources, and we also have customer data in our ERP, because some brands don't actually have a CRM system, they're just using our POS system for very basic CRM, so we're also bringing that data in. And we've recently launched a group-wide loyalty program. And again, another reason for choosing a sort of big data or a scalable platform as it was we knew that this data was going to grow fairly quickly. Our loyalty program has been a big success, and we have a lot of new data coming in there. So the next phase of the project is to get that loyalty data coming in and to further enrich the customer 360. So since we already had a deployment on Azure for some other BI, and we had some experience with the Azure cloud, we chose that, but it wasn't, we could have gone with AWS or whatever, but it works pretty well on Azure, so we chose Azure Data Lake Store as the storage layer, and we're using HD Insight as our Spark cluster. So the HD Insight is nice because it's a platform as a service, so it's managed by Microsoft. I mean, you still scale it as you would a Spark cluster. You specify how many nodes and things like that you want, but the underlying infrastructure management is not a problem for us. That takes that headache away. And then on top of that, we run the Zaloni data platform, which does the stitching. And as Scott said, it's just part of a bigger pipeline managed entirely by the Zaloni data platform, from the ingestion of the source files using the Zaloni data collection agent. We pump the files every night, daily, onto the edge node where the Zaloni data collection agent ingests those into our raw zone. So it is a sort of traditional data lake architecture. We have a raw zone and a pre-processing zone, and then finally to the trusted production zone. And as part of this long pipeline, which we can see nicely through the Zaloni interface, and we can see that full data lineage as the cleansing is done. So we conform the telephone numbers and things like that. We check that the email addresses have @ symbols, all the standard kind of cleansing steps, all done as part of the Zaloni data workflow. And then we actually use another workflow to scale up our cluster in size before running the data master extension, which is the secret source, which creates those customer golden records, and then we stitch the transactional history to that and push it all into a Hive data warehouse. So as Scott said, we have a few different audiences for this data. From Hive, we then extract out into a SQL database, and we're using SQL Server analysis services with Power BI on top for the dashboarding part of it, for the more senior managers and the non-technical users to actually see those headline metrics, so we can measure that customer lifetime value, and we can see that trending over time. We can see who's shopped in the last 12 months and how that is trending over time. So do a lot of time series analysis and create a lot of calculations in the analysis services. And we also have the Hive database, where we have a couple of technical analysts embedded in our strategic marketing team who can do a lot of ad hoc queries through Hue, just through SQL queries, through Hive. And now we've been also playing with some notebooks and running some Python and things like that on it. And that's the next step, really. Once we've sort of done the traditional BI stuff, we'll take the next steps and try and do a bit more advanced analytics. We're using R on top of it, so we just import data into R Studio, where we're doing some market basket analysis there. So we're looking at combining sort of the RFM analysis we do with some market basket analysis, and we're feeding this back to a couple of our brands who are using this for targeted marketing. So I'm rambling on a bit about the whole architecture, but this is the bit I like, the technical piece. And it works very well. And I think the point is that the master data extension, because it's been particularly tuned to our requirement, it works particularly well. It took us a little while, but that's the point of, you train a machine learning model, you test it, you train it, you test it. And we're getting a very high accuracy now of matching, which I don't believe we would have achieved either by a rule-based matching or through a traditional data mastering solution. So it works pretty well for us. And like I say, the beauty is it's going to scale to future use cases as we're bringing in more and more customer data. We're in discussions with Zaloni actually bringing in Twitter data, so we can align this with some sentiment analysis as well. And we've just got a little view here. We're pushing the data out into some fairly simple Power BI dashboards, where we just have, the average number of brands that customers are shopping in, just these headline numbers, which are very simple questions to ask, but we just didn't have any visibility of this. We could not see what our customer lifetime value was, how frequently customers are shopping, and just what, on average, a known customer is spending. It's a simple question to ask, but quite a difficult one to answer. But now we have those answers, which is nice, and this is kind of the very first steps in this, and it's been quite successful. And we also have some more detailed dashboards, which we are providing back to our brands, because the brands are finding, although they're running their own CRM systems, the analytics that they can do on top of these, or the out-of-the-box reports that these off-the-shelf CRM systems provide, is not giving them very much insight at all. So through the Power BI interface, they can slice and dice the data, and then they can export directly from there to get that list of customers to run a particular marketing campaign. So they'll slice it, like I say, by the recency, frequency, the monetary spend, and other demographics, obviously male, female, date of birth, things like that, where we have the coverage of data, and they can export those lists, and then they run those, they load those into their marketing campaign tools. So there's quite a lot of activity, and this is growing pretty quickly for us. Yeah, I think that was mostly on that. I mean, we've talked a bit about some of the things we're measuring. At the end of the day, at the bottom of it, is obviously improving the marketing ROI. The nice thing is now we can actually monitor that uplift as well. We're feeding this information back in, trying to create a feedback loop. So we extract the data, the brands run marketing campaigns. Do we see an uplift of sales? We know who those customers are we targeted. So whilst pulling from the CRM systems, we pull the customer data. What I didn't mention, going back a bit, we actually pull all the campaign data as well. So we have customer and all the campaigns. So any email and SMS campaigns that are sent, we also ingest that. And we've done some interesting things in R, looking at the correlation between, just the number of SMSs that we send to a customer. Is there a direct correlation between that and sales? Simple analysis, but we just didn't have a view on that before. So now we're looking at the feedback between running marketing campaigns and are we making, is it worth it? Are we pestering these people, or are we getting that level of engagement right? And like I said, doing things like this simple market basket analysis and joining that to the RFM so that we can offer very simple customized offers. Next steps, of course, is to build a complete recommendation engine on top of this. So we have the Spark cluster and we have MLlib, so it should be fairly straightforward to extend this and start building recommendations. We want to offer this back to our brands as a service by creating an API layer, which we already have. What wasn't shown on the previous diagram, actually, we pushed some of the data into Elastic Stack, where we have some simple APIs. This is for experimental purposes, but the idea is that we could retrieve customer recommendations at the POS, which is something which should be quite exciting. So whilst we've achieved quite a bit of success so far with this, we really can push on now and really grow the platform and scale it out to a lot more use cases. So I think that covers. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tim. That was really, really insightful, and appreciate the information. So as we wrap things up here, I wanted to kind of review quickly, just to summarize a few of the key points. Right, as we talked earlier, organizations from the beginning of time pretty much are trying to build this holistic view of customer data. So that's going to continue on, and new and modern data platforms are changing the way that that's done in a certain ways. But it continues to be a struggle, right? The sprawl of data in hybrid environments, the greater volume and variety of information. Some existing technologies are struggling to provide the flexibility that organizations want, or maybe the scale that they need. To try and help address this, Zaloni's delivered the Zaloni Data Platform. It's a unified governed data management solution. We're helping our customers deliver trusted, high-value data to accelerate time to insight. And as part of this Data Master extension is an add-on that customers can use that's specifically geared towards improving the overall data matching and building of Customer 360, Data 360 types of projects. And again, many thanks to Tim from Chaloub to kind of go through their journey as they've gone through this. I think there was some really good insights there on how they moved it to the cloud, how they're leveraging the Azure Data Lake storage and some of the elastic compute there to scale as needed. Tim, are there any other use cases? You mentioned use cases, whether it's for the Customer Data Hub or use of the Zaloni Data Platform that you're looking to expand on as you guys move forward.
Yeah, I mean, very much. I mean, this first use case has really sort of proven the value of the platform. And we always had a roadmap around customer data. We want to bring in the digital exhaust from our e-commerce platforms collect that, but that'll be an interesting use case for semi-structured data as we grow our e-commerce business and do some e-commerce analytics again, extending that customer 360 view. And like I said, the loyalty data will be coming in. Completely separate to that, we're actually starting a new initiative on supply chain analytics. We have, again, part of our business, obviously we're a retailer, but we're also a distributor locally, and this is a big part of our business. And again, it's a very complex part of the business. And this really is a true kind of a big data problem when we're looking at things like the stock on hand snapshot every day for every store, for every warehouse, and how that changes throughout the region. So this is the next big set of use cases we want to deliver on the Zaloni data platform. And once we bring that in, there's a whole world of analytics we can do. And again, it's a simple questions people are asking. They want to ensure that, we're trying to guarantee on-shelf availability of our prime products. So we do a Pareto analysis. What 80% of our sales are coming from that 20% of those products? How do we ensure those products are always available on the shelf? And if they're not, what is that lost opportunity? So we're really starting in the early phases now to analyze these data sources. And the supply chain team are actually building their own analytics team, and this is where the Zaloni platform, especially the data catalog, is going to be a key enabler for us, because they're going to have technical analysts who are going to want to get at this raw data via the data catalog. So we're going to have to spend some time and take our data governance seriously and get all this data under control. And because we're talking now, we've done an assessment. We're looking at a couple of billion rows of data, so it's not something we can just push into a SQL server. So this is really a good quality big data use case, and I think again we can get a lot of value from the platform pretty quickly on this one. So there's
fantastic. Well, maybe in a few months we can do another webinar on the catalog usage.
yeah, that would be good. Yes, once we've got that one, we can talk about that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think Brett, we've covered the content, so we'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Yeah. So at this point, we'll open it up to any questions. Again, if you have any, just use the Ask a Question box that's located just below the player window. We've had a few come in, so I'll go ahead and read those out. So this one is for Tim. How has this initiative improved your time to insights? And how long does it take for a customer action to turn into something marketing can use now versus how it was before?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, comparatively, because we had almost zero visibility of this, so in terms of improving time to insight, it's almost, you could say, it's infinite. But we're at the moment we're taking transaction data daily, but in terms of the customer data, we're only refreshing it on a monthly basis. So you could say our time to insight has a latency of 1 month before we refresh this data. But it's essentially the dashboards, once they're updated, it's almost refreshed once a month, and that data is always up to date. On the first of the month you have data refreshed up to the end of the last month. So it's a pretty quick turnaround of data, and compared to what we had before, where it was very piecemeal and ad hoc, it's now a centralized view of this data. So it's a fairly quick turnaround. I mean, we could improve the turnaround of the data. We don't really see a strong use case for having sort of near real-time data. We're looking at, in all cases, what is an activity over a longer period of time. When we look at customer lifetime value or churn, for example, calculating churn, we measure it in years. If we were fast-moving goods or we were a telco, you'd look at it in weeks or months maybe. But for us, you're selling, expensive items. You're not going to sell that many of them. So our churn period is measured in years. So we refresh the data once a month. Now, once we start bringing in other data, we may have a requirement from the business to turn that data around faster, and we'll be able to do that. But at the moment, we have, like I say, a 1 month latency in the data. So I hope that kind of answers it.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, another one we've got. What's a typical implementation time for a project this size?
Shall I answer this? Yep. From our experience, you probably have experience of implementing multiple of these. For us, it went fairly quickly. I think end to end, I mean, from requirements gathering to going live, we did it in under 6 months. I think it was about 5 months it took us from kick-off to go live with the platform, which I think is pretty quick turnaround for this kind of project.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think it kind of varies from project to project. In some cases, I think, as you mentioned, we're being used for ingestion and other parts of the entire data pipelining and data lifecycle management at Chaloub. In other cases, from a pure matching perspective, we have customers who've already, let's say, put the data into a specific type of environment, and we're just, refining the algorithms, building the models, and applying them, and it may go a little quicker in some of those cases. But I think 6 months end to end to get things into production is a fairly good timeline for a project of this nature.
Yeah, and we're still growing it as well. We're still constantly onboarding new data sets. I mean, the Zaloni team trained us on the platform, so we have the skills now in-house. Like I say, we discovered we had this extra repository of data in our actual POS system, where those brands who didn't have a CRM, which we hadn't really considered, so now we're currently in the process of loading that. So we're constantly refining and iterating and growing the platform, so it never has an end date. It will always grow. Yeah.
That's great. Let's see. So I think this one is for Scott specifically. Says if I'm using other technology for ETL or data ingestion properties, could we still use EDP's data matching capabilities?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's something I didn't cover during the presentation. So, as part of the Zaloni data platform, we have the end-to-end capabilities for managing ingestion and ETL style data movement, as well as data cataloging, data quality, and so forth. But if you've already built an application or have licensed another technology that you're using from an ETL perspective, you can use that to move the data, then we can catalog that information, and from our catalog you can use the data master extension to create the either deduplicated information or build out your customer 360 hub using our platform. So long answer to a question that was simply yes.
I think there's an additional one to that. Can other data matching technologies be integrated into your solution?
Yeah, so integrated is an interesting word there. The way I would say it is if you've already created a unique customer ID with another matching technology, that can be an input to the model that we use for matching data. So that can be one input, and then you can expand upon that with other variables and other parts of the model. So we've seen that happen specifically with some customers where they had built out their own matching initiative and wanted to sort of leverage that as the starting point and then grow from there.
Okay, great. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. So I guess with that, we'll, I want to thank all of you for joining this presentation. Thanks to Tim and Scott for taking the time to speak with us about Chaloub's Customer Golden Record project and the partnership with Zaloni. Now, this presentation will be available on demand on Zaloni's Resources Hub and on the BrightTalk network for future viewing. And the slides will also be available in the Attachments tab located just below the player window. And with that, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.